Yo, so we were doing in the last video, last live stream, we left off at para 1 of schedule 1. Now we look at supply between related persons or distinct persons, para 2 of schedule 1. Supply of goods or services or both between related persons or between distinct persons as specified in section 25 will qualify as supply even if made without consideration, provided the same is made in the course of furtherance of business. Let us understand the terms related persons and distinct persons. Related persons are a person who is under influence of another person is called a related person, like members of the same family or subsidiaries of a group company. Under GST law, various categories of related persons have been specified. The term related person has been defined in explanation to section 15. The said definition has been depicted by way of a diagram as follows. Persons, including legal persons, are deemed as related persons if such persons are officers, directors of one another's business, such persons are legally recognized partners, such persons are employer and employee. A third person controls, owns, holds, directly or indirectly, above 25% voting stock or shares of both of them. One of them controls directly or indirectly the other. A third person controls directly or indirectly both of them. Such persons together control directly or indirectly a third person. Such persons are members of the same family. One of them is the sole agent, sole distributor, sole concessionaire of the other. Example 18. Miss Priya holds 30% shares of ABC Limited and 35% shares of XYZ Limited. ABC Limited and XYZ Limited are related. Example 19. Q Limited has a deciding role in corporate policy, operations management, and quality control of R Limited. It can be said that Q Limited controls R Limited, thus Q and R Limited are related. Distinct person specified under section 25. Before we go through the statutory provisions of distinct persons, let us first have an overview of the registration provisions. For better for better understanding of the concept of distinct persons. Under GST law, a supplier is required to obtain state-wise registration. He has to obtain registration in every state or union territory from where he makes a taxable supply, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds a specified threshold limit. Thus, he is not required to obtain registration from a state or union territory from where he makes a non-taxable or exempt supply. Since registration under GST is PAN based, once a supplier is liable to register, he has to obtain registration in each of the states or union territories in which he operates under the same PAN. Further, he is not required to obtain registration in a state or union territory. However, where he has multiple places of business in a state or union territory, he gets a single registration for said state or union territory. He may also get separate registration for any place or places of business in such state or union territory. Now let us understand the concept of distinct person in simple terms. The establishments of a persons with separate registrations, whether within the same state or union territory or in different states or union territories, are considered as distinct persons. Where a person having one registered establishment in a state or union territory has another establishment in a different state or union territory, not necessarily registered, these establishments are considered as establishments of distinct persons. Statutory provisions relating to distinct persons are contained in subsections 4 and 5 of section 25. They have been explained with examples as follows. A person who has obtained is required a person who has obtained is required to obtain more than one registration, whether in one state or union territory, or more than one state or union territory, shall, in respect of each such registration, be treated as distinct persons. Example 20. Mohan, a chartered accountant, has a registered head office in Delhi. He has also obtained registration in the state of West Bengal in respect of his newly opened branch office. Mohan's registrations under GST under same PAN in West Bengal and Delhi shall be treated as distinct persons. Further, where a person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration in a state or union territory in respect of an establishment has an establishment in another state or union territory, then such establishments shall be treated as establishments of distinct person. Further explanation 1 to Section 8 of the IGST Act stipulates that establishments of the same entity shall be considered as establishments of distinct persons where a person has an establishment in India and any other establishment outside India, an establishment in a state or union territory, and any other establishment outside the state or union territory, an establishment in a state or union territory, and any other establishment within that state or union territory. Example 21. Rishabh Enterprises, a registered supplier, owns a restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra. It has opened a liquor shop in Raipur, Uttarakhand for trading of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Since supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption in Uttarakhand is a non-taxable supply, Rishabh Enterprises is not required to obtain registration with respect to the same in Uttarakhand. In this case, restaurant in Maharashtra and liquor shop, though unregistered in Uttarakhand, shall be treated as establishments of distinct persons. Supply by Maharashtra restaurant to Uttarakhand shop in course or furtherance of business, even without consideration, will qualify as supply. Let me read this example once again. Rishabh Enterprise, a registered supplier, owns a restaurant in Vidar, Maharashtra. It has opened a liquor shop in Raipur. Since supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption is non-taxable, Rishabh Enterprise is not required to obtain registration of the same in Uttarakhand. In this case, restaurant in Maharashtra and Uttarakhand shall be treated as establishments of distinct persons. Supply by Maharashtra restaurant to Uttarakhand shop in course or furtherance of business, even without consideration, will qualify as supply. Stock transfers or branch transfers qualify as supply. It is a common practice in business to transfer goods transferred amongst different units of same entity. For instance, distribution of samples manufactured in a factory to different branches or transfer of goods from factory to depot or showroom for sale therefrom, from one warehouse to another warehouse, from one branch to another branch, where the demand of the good is higher. Since the transfer is within the same business, the transferor unit would not charge any amount to the transferred unit. Similarly, it is also possible that one branch supplies services to another branch of the same entity without consideration. These transactions are termed as self supplies. Under GST, these transactions, though undertaken without consideration, will also qualify as supply provided the transfer of goods or services is between different locations with separate GST registrations of same legal entity, as these are transactions between distinct persons or establishments of distinct persons. Raghubir, example 22, Raghubir Fabrics transfers 1000 shirts from his factory located in Lucknow to its retail showroom in Delhi so that the same can be sold from there. The factory and retail showroom are registered in the states where they are located. Although no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom constitutes supply. However, transfer between two units of a legal entity under single registration, apparently within same state, will not be considered as supply. This can be understood with the help of the following example. Raghubir Fabrics transfers 1000 shirts from his factory located in Lucknow to his retail showroom in Kanpur. It has taken only one registration in the state of UP, declaring Lucknow factory as principal place of business and Kanpur as additional place of business. Since no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom in the same state under single registration does not constitute supply. Okay. However, in the above example, if Raghubir Fabrics obtained separate registrations for Lucknow and Kanpur, stock transfer between the Lucknow and Kanpur showroom will constitute supply. The concept arising from the above discussion is summarized in the below diagram. Whether the establishments have same PAN, yes. Whether separate registrations have been obtained for two places of business within the same state, no. Whether transfer between them will be considered as supply under GST, no. Whether the establishments have same PAN, yes. Whether separate registrations have been obtained for two places of business within same state, yes. Then in that case, it will be considered a supply even if made without consideration. Molds and dies owned by OEM that are sent free of cost to a component manufacturer in course of furtherance of business do not constitute supply since they are not related persons or distinct persons and there is no consideration involved. Supply of goods or services or both between an employer and employee. In terms of the definition of related person given above, employer and employee are related persons. However, services provided by an employee to the employer in the course of or in relation to his employment are outside the scope of GST as per Schedule 3 of the CGST Act. Gifts by employer to employee. Further, proviso to Para 2 of Schedule 1 provides that the gifts up to 50,000 in value in a financial year by an employer to an employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. However, gifts of value more than 50,000 made without consideration are supply and are subject to GST when made in the course or furtherance of business. The term gift has not been defined in the GST law. In common parlance, gift is made without consideration, is voluntary in nature, and is made occasionally. It cannot be demanded as a matter of right by the employee, and the employee cannot move a court of law for obtaining a gift. Since services by an employee perquisites by employer to employees. Since services by an employee to the employer in the course of or in relation to his employment are outside the scope of GST, supply by the employer to the employee in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and employee will not be subjected to GST. Any prerequisites any perquisites provided by the employer to its employees in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and the employee are in lieu of the services provided by employee to the employer in relation to his employment. It provides therefrom that perquisites provided by the employer to the employee in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and the employee will not be subject to GST. Let me read this part again. Since services by an employee to the employer in the course of or in relation to his employment are outside the scope of GST, supplied by the employer to the employee in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and employee will not be subjected to GST. Any perquisites provided by the employer to its employees in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and employee are in lieu of the services provided by employee to the employer in relation to his employment. It follows therefrom that perquisites provided by the employer to the employee in terms of contractual agreement between the both will not be subject to GST. Further, the input tax credit scheme under GST does not allow ITC of membership of a club, health, and fitness center. Consequently, if such services are provided free of charge to all the employees by the employer, then the same will not be subject to GST. The same would hold true for free housing to the employees when the same is provided in terms of contract between the employer and employee and is part and parcel of the cost to company. Principal agent, para 3 of Schedule 1. Supply of goods by a principal to his agent without consideration, where the agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal is considered as supply. Similarly, supply of goods by an agent to his principal without consideration, where the agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of the principal, is considered as supply. Points which merit consideration in this regard are as follows. 1. Only supply of goods and not supply of services is covered here. Supply of goods between principal and agent without consideration is also supply. Thus, the supply of services between the principal and the agent and vice versa would require consideration to be present so as to be considered as supply and thus making it liable to GST. Wait. Okay. So only supply of goods and not supply of services is covered here. Supply of goods between principal and agent without consideration is also supply. Thus, the supply of services between principal and agent would require consideration to be called supply. Let us first go through the meaning of the terms principal and agent. Section 25 defines agent as a person including a factor, broker, commission agent, arhatia, del creditor agent, an auctioneer, or any other mercantile agent, by whatever name called, who carries on the business of supply or receipt of goods or services or both on behalf of another. As we can deduce from this definition of agent that the term agent is defined in terms of the various activities being carried out by that person concerned in the principal agent relationship, and the supply or receipt of goods and services has to be undertaken by the agent on behalf of the principal. Further, the term principal has been defined under section 288 as a person on whose behalf an agent carries on the business of supply or receipt of goods or services or both. In order to determine whether a particular principal agent relationship falls within the ambit of the para 3 of schedule 1 as discussed above or not, the deciding factor is whether the invoice for the further supply of goods on behalf of the principal is being issued by the agent or not. In other words, the crucial point is whether or not the agent has the authority to pass or receive the title of the goods on behalf of the principal. Where the invoice for further supply is being issued by the agent in his name, then any provision of goods from the principal to agent would fall within the fold of para 3 above. That is, invoice for the further supply to customer is being issued in the agent's name. However, where the invoice is issued by the agent to the customer in the name of the principal, such agent shall not fall within the ambit of para 3 above. Similarly, where the goods being procured by the agent on behalf of the principal are invoiced in the name of the agent, then further provision of the said goods by the agent to the principal would not be covered by para 3 above. Goods procured on behalf of principal are invoiced in the agent's name. Where the invoice is issued by the agent to customer in the name of principal or agent, whether he will be an agent in terms of para 3 of schedule 1, sorry, where the invoice is issued by the agent to customer in the name of principal, he will fall within the he will not fall within the ambit of para 3 of schedule 1. That is, it will not be considered a deemed supply because consideration is absent. And if the invoice is issued in the name of the agent to the customer, then in that case the sending of goods by the principal to the agent without consideration will be considered as deemed supply. The above clarification can be understood with the help of following scenario-based examples. Example 24. Anmol appoints Bholu to procure certain goods from the market. Bholu identifies various suppliers who can provide the goods as desired by Anmol and asks the supplier Golu to send the goods and issue the invoice directly to Anmol. In this scenario, Bholu is only acting as the procurement agent and has in no way involved himself in the supply or receipt of the goods. Hence, in accordance with the provisions of this Act, Bholu is not an agent of Anmol for supply of goods in terms of para 3 of schedule 1. Example 25. Money Bank, a banking company, appoints Mandar, an auctioneer, to auction certain goods. The auctioneer arranges for the auction and identifies the potential bidders. The highest bid is accepted and the goods are sold to the highest bidder by Money Bank. The invoice for the supply of the goods is issued by Money Bank to the successful bidder. In this scenario, the auctioneer is merely providing the auctioneering services with no role played in the supply of goods. Even in this scenario, Mandar is not an agent of Money Bank for the supply of goods in terms of para 3 of schedule 1. Example 26. Gautam, an artist, appoints Gambhir, an auctioneer, to auction his painting. Gambhir arranges for auction and identifies the potential bidders. The invoice for the supply of the painting is issued by Gambhir on behalf of Gautam, but in his own name, and the painting is delivered to the successful bidder. In this scenario, Gambhir is not merely providing auctioneering services but is also supplying the painting on behalf of Gautam to the bidder and has the authority to transfer the title of the painting on behalf of Gautam. This scenario is covered under Para 3 of Schedule 1. Example 27. A carrying and forwarding agent or commission agent takes possession of the goods from the principal and issues the invoice in his own name. In such cases, carrying and forwarding commission agent is an agent of the principal for the supply of goods in terms of Para 3 of Schedule 1. The disclosure or non disclosure of the name of the principal is immaterial in such situations. Example 28. Ravi sells agricultural produce by utilizing the services of Kavi, who is a commission agent as per the Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Act of the state. Kavi identifies the buyers and sellers and sells the agricultural produce on behalf of Ravi, for which he charges a commission from Ravi. As per the APMC Act, the commission agent is a person who buys or sells the agricultural produce on behalf of his principal or facilitates buying and selling of agricultural produce on behalf of his principal and receives by way of remuneration a commission or percentage upon the amount involved in such transaction. In cases where the invoice is issued by Kavi to the buyer, then he is an agent covered under Para 3. However, in cases where the invoice is issued directly by Ravi to the buyer, the commission agent doesn't fall under the category of agent under Para 3. Clarification of issues pertaining to Del Credere agent. A question was posed by the industry whether supply between a principal and Del Credere agent would also get covered under Schedule 1. The government clarified the doubt of the industry by way of following clarification. Before going through the clarification, let us first understand what is meant by a DCA. In commercial trade parlance, a DCA is an selling agent who is engaged by a principal to assist in supply of goods or services by contacting potential buyers on behalf of the principal. The factor that differentiates a DCA from other agents is that a DCA guarantees the payment to the supplier. In such scenarios where the buyer fails to make payment to the principal by the due date, DCA makes the payment to the principal on behalf of the buyer. And for this reason, the commission paid to DCA may be relatively higher than that paid to a normal agent. In order to guarantee timely payment to the supplier, the DCA can resort to various methods, including extending short term transaction based loans to the buyer or paying the supplier himself and recovering the amount from the buyer with some interest at a later date. This loan is to be repaid by the buyer along with the interest to the DCA at a rate mutually agreed between DCA and the buyer. So, what is the issue here and what's the clarification given by the notification number 7347 dated 2018? Whether a DCA falls under the ambit of agent under Para 3 of Schedule 1, as clarified already, White Circular 5731, whether or not the DCA will fall under the ambit of agent under Para 3, it depends on the following possible scenarios. In case where the invoice of the supply of goods is issued by the supplier to the customer, either himself or through DCA, the DCA does not fall under the ambit of agent. In case where the invoice for the supply of goods is issued by the DCA in his own name, the DCA would fall under the ambit of agent. Whether the temporary short-term transaction-based loan extended by the DCA to the recipient for which transaction is charged, for which interest is charged by the DCA, is to be included in the value of goods being supplied by the supplier, where DCA is not an agent under Para 3 of Schedule 1. In such a scenario, following activities are taking place: supply of goods from supplier to recipient, supply of agency services from DCA to the supplier or the recipient or both, supply of extension of loan services by the DCA to the recipient. It is clarified that in cases where the DCA is not an agent under Para 3 of Schedule 1, the temporary short term transaction based loan being provided by DCA to the buyer is a supply of service by the DCA to the recipient on principal to principal basis and is an independent supply. Therefore, the interest being charged by the DCA would not form part of the value or supply of goods supplied by the supplier. Where DCA is an agent under Para 3 of Schedule 1 and makes payment to the principal on behalf of the buyer and charges interest to the buyer for delayed payment along with the value of goods being supplied. Whether the interest will form a part of the value of supply of goods also or not. In such a scenario, following activities are taking place: supply of goods by the supplier to the DCA, further supply of goods by the DCA to the recipient, supply of agency services by the DCA to the supplier or the recipient or both, extension of credit by the DCA to the recipient. It is clarified that in cases where the DCA is an agent under Para 3 of Schedule 1, the temporary short term transactions based credit being provided by DCA to the buyer no longer retains its character of an independent supply and is subsumed in the supply of the goods by the DCA to the recipient. It is emphasized that the activity of extension of credit by the DCA to the recipient would not be considered as a separate supply as it is in the context of the supply of goods made by the DCA to the recipient. It is also further clarified that the value of the interest charged for such credit would be required to be included in the value of supply of goods by DCA to the recipient as per section 15(2)(d). Importation of services, para 4 of Schedule 1. Import of services by a person from a related person or from his establishment located outside India without consideration in the course or furtherance of business shall be treated as supply. Jumru Associates received legal consultancy services from its head office located in Malaysia. The head office has rendered such consultancy services free of cost to its branch office. Since Jumru Associates and the head office are related persons, services received by Jumru Associates will qualify as supply even though the head office has not charged anything from it. Chakmak, a proprietor registered in Delhi, has sought architect services from his son located in US with respect to his newly constructed house in Delhi. Although services have been received by Chakmak without consideration from his son, a related person, yet it will not qualify as supply since the same has not been received in course or furtherance of business. However, if in the above case Chakmak receives architect services without consideration from his son with respect to his office in Delhi, the same shall be treated as supply because the same has been received in the course of business. So, in case of imported of service with consideration, it is in the course or furtherance of business or not, it is supply always. If the imported service is without consideration, then we look at whether it's from a related or distinct persons in the course of furtherance of business. In that case, it will be supply. If it's in any other case, then it is not a supply. In the preceding paras, we have discussed the provisions of Schedule 1, which enumerates the cases where an activity is treated as supply, even though it is undertaken free of cost. In this backdrop, let us now examine whether the items given free of cost in case of some of the sales promotion schemes qualify as supply or not. Okay. Clarification on sales promotion schemes. A number of sales promotion schemes are commonly employed by the businesses to increase sales volume or to encourage the use or trial of a product or service so that new customers get attracted towards their products. For instance, certain sections of trade and industry, such as pharmaceutical companies, often provide drug samples to the stockists, dealers, medical practitioners, etc. Or sometimes companies announce offers like buy one get one free, buy one soap and get one soap free, or get one toothbrush free along with the purchase of toothpaste. As we have already seen that as per section 7(1)(a), the goods or services which are supplied free of cost shall not be treated as supply except in cases of activities mentioned in Schedule 1 of the CGST Act. In view of the same, few sales promotion schemes have been examined as under: free samples and gifts. Samples which are supplied free of cost without any consideration do not qualify as supply under GST, except where this activity falls within the ambit of Schedule 1. Buy one get one free offer. It may appear at first glance that in case of offers like buy one get one free, one item is being supplied free of cost without any consideration. In fact, it is not an individual supply of free goods, but a case of two or more individual supplies where a single price is being charged for the entire supply. Taxability of such supply will be dependent upon as to whether the supply is composite or mixed, and the rate of tax shall be determined accordingly. There has always been an ambiguity as to whether activities or transactions involving supply of goods or services by a person other than an individual to its members or vice versa fall within the purview of supply or not. Clause AA to Section 1 7.1 brings in the certainty that said activities or transactions are covered within the scope of supply under GST and ensures the levy of GST on such activities or transactions. This has been discussed as under. Activities or transactions between a person other than an individual and its members constituents for consideration. The activities or transactions involving supply of goods or services between a person other than an individual, that is, association, club, etc., and its members or constituents for cash, deferred payment, or other valuable consideration are covered within the ambit of supply. Further explanation to clause AA of section 7.1 clarifies that for the purpose of this clause, such person, association, club, etc., and its members or constituents shall be deemed to be two separate persons, and the supply of activities or transactions between them shall be deemed to take place from one such person to another. The explanation starts with the non obstante clause and shall have an overriding effect over anything contained in any other law for the time being in force, or any judgment, decree, or order of any court, tribunal, or authority. The aforesaid explanation prevents the application of doctrine of mutuality by such persons. Section 71AA in effect overrules the judgment of Honorable Supreme Court in State of West Bengal versus Calcutta Club Limited, wherein it was held that the transactions between a club and its members cannot be taxed owing to doctrine of mutuality. A person cannot make a profit from himself. Example 31. Resident Welfare Association of Sanskriti Society supplies air conditioners to its members at a concessional price. A residential, example 32, a residential welfare society association collects maintenance charges from its members for services provided. Here, in both the aforesaid examples, it shall be deemed that the resident welfare association and its members are two separate persons, and it shall be deemed that the supply has taken place from resident welfare associations to its members. Okay, we'll keep this limited to here and we'll take it up tomorrow. So study session 2, we'll put this at 32. Total time studied today is 1.3 hours.